So guys, on today's show, we actually have a con man. Matt Cox committed mortgage fraud and spent many years in prison for that. We dive deep into what exactly he was doing with his schemes, how he was getting away with it, and how he actually went on the run and got away from the cops multiple times. So it's a really crazy story. And then we also hear about how he has redeemed himself since then. So you want to stay till the end. We'll catch you then. Are you looking to grow your real estate investing business? My company, Future Flipper, can help. We've taught hundreds of people all over the country how to flip, wholesale, and buy rental properties. And it doesn't matter where you're at in your investing journey. Whether you're trying to get your first deal or scale your company, Future Flipper can help. We have courses, coaching, and events for all levels of investors. So if you want to take the next step, go to futureflipper.com and book a free consultation to see how we can best help you. Once again, that's futureflipper.com. One of the hardest parts about real estate investing is finding a good contractor. That's where Southwestern Custom Construction comes in. They've been doing remodels in Nevada and Arizona since 2006. As a fully licensed and bonded general contractor, they're able to help with any type of renovation, all the way from an entry-level fixer-upper to a custom luxury home. Southwestern Custom Construction specializes in working with investors. I've personally used them on many of my projects, so I know their team is legit. If you want to get a bid on a project, head over to customhomenow.com. Once again, that's customhomenow.com. Welcome to the Ryan Pineda Show, where our mission is to invest,
I only expect to make money in things that I understand.
innovate,
It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past.
and inspire. I am much more likely to hit my goal just due to putting it out there.
You're now rocking with the best.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Ryan Pineda Show. Today, I've got Matt Cox with me, who has been on many podcasts to share his story about mortgage fraud. And let me tell you guys, he was telling me a little bit about it outside of the podcast just now, and it is absolutely insane, man. So happy you came out to Vegas to see me, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me out.
Yeah, dude. So I'm very interested to hear your story firsthand because I am somebody who, right or wrong, likes to live in the gray area and push the envelope as it relates to investing and taxes and other things. And I definitely don't want to end up in prison for it.
Right.
So I think I can learn a lot of valuable lessons from you and your story. So for those of you who don't know, Matt actually served over 12 years?
Yeah.
12 years in prison for mortgage fraud. He was number one on the Secret Service Most Wanted list.
Right.
He was on the FBI Most Wanted list. How many people are even on like both lists?
You know, I don't think anybody even knows there is a Secret Service's Most Wanted list, but I think it's something like 20 people. There's like 150 people on the FBI's Most Wanted list.
Yeah.
So it's, it's most, the thing is that both of them were looking for me. That's the issue is like,
And nobody could find you.
Yeah,
They're
well,
both
that
looking.
was for 3 years. That was when I was on the run. But yeah, it's and the U.S. Marshals, of course, they were all they're looking for you.
Just literally everybody was looking for you. So, man, the reason I'm really curious to hear the story is because obviously you were in the real estate industry for mortgage fraud, and you were actually flipping houses and doing things that I talk about doing all the time. So, dude, let's just start from the beginning. I was doing
it different than you, though.
You were doing it a little different. So let's just hear from the beginning, dude. Like, how did this all start?
I owned a mortgage company. And you see, as, owning a mortgage company, I started off and, I had 10 or 12 guys working for me. And, we were doing little fraud here. I say a little fraud. There's no little fraud, obviously. But, in comparison to what ultimately I was doing, it was minor. So, you're changing a 30-day late. I'm changing W-2s and pay stubs. I'm making W-2s and pay stubs. I'm doing minor things to get the loan to go through underwriting.
Hold on real quick, though. I mean, these minor things you're talking about, back in the day, when they were doing all these fake loans, right?
Right.
Like, that was very prevalent. No income, just everything stated, whatever you say, you can get a loan. And so I hear that, and I'm like, is that really different than what many others were doing?
The difference is that if you go in and you say, look, I'm a plumber and I make $120,000 a year, and really you make $60,000 a year, one, you're already committing fraud. But the difference is that I'm coming up with the actual documents to tell Countrywide, or First Union, or
you would create
Washington
a document
Mutual.
for that plumber.
Right. I'm creating a document saying he works for a company that also doesn't exist that I've created. Here are his last 2 years pay or W-2s. Here's his last month's worth of pay stubs. Here's his, then I would create online banks that don't exist. I'd create, bank statements that don't exist. Send everything to underwriting. They would call and verify. You can verify it. You can go on the Secretary of State's website. You can verify the tax ID number.
So you were creating like shell companies. That didn't
everything.
exist.
Right. To get the loan to go through.
Right.
And of course, then I'm charging a premium. And so I'm doing those types of loans at the mortgage company. And eventually that catches up with me. And I end up getting indicted. It ended up being wire fraud because I had lied on an application and to allow someone to acquire a bunch of loans that they shouldn't have acquired. Obviously, you can't qualify. So, they got the loans. I end up getting in trouble. I end up getting 3 years probation, but I can't own the mortgage company anymore. And so, like I said to you outside, is that I should have stepped back and said, I'm going to claim bankruptcy. I'm going to move into my parents' spare room. I'm going to go get a job at Walmart. I'm going to be humble and small and realize I've got an opportunity here.
You dodged a bullet.
Yeah, I dodged a bullet. I'm good. I'm starting over. But, I'm a narcissistic prick and arrogant, and I just couldn't stomach stepping back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and so what I did was instead, I said, no, I'm going to step it up. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start flipping houses. And all the problems with flipping houses, they don't appraise high enough. You have to put too much money into them. You have to find a qualified buyer. All of those things I knew I could overcome. So I start creating synthetic identities. I start buying houses for $40,000 and recording the value of those houses at $200,000. So the entire market where I'm buying these really horrible rehabs, I drive the prices up, the appraised value of those homes up through the roof. So the median price in those areas was $75,000, and I drove it up to about $250,000. Well, that's what I was in Forbes, and they had said that in 2003, the area I was in was one of the fastest growing zip codes in the nation.
Due to fraud.
Right. I did 109 houses. According to the FBI, I borrowed $11.5 million, and I created these fake people to buy houses that I was buying for $50,000, recording the value, sales price at $200,000, and then just putting maybe $5,000 or $10,000 into the house.
So let me just back up real quick. So were you Matt Cox, the seller, on these?
The first few I was.
Right.
But then I realized, I'm letting these things go into foreclosure. Like, I don't want to be Matt Cox, the seller, on 100 houses. So then I started I got the hard money guys would lend the money, and I just go and say, hey, I need you to lend money on this house. I've got a guy that will buy it. And that eliminated me having to create a purchase and a refi. Now it's a very quick purchase, and I can immediately start the refi.
So on paper, who was the owner? Like, somebody's buying it for $40,000, right?
I'm buying it from whoever the wholesaler is or whoever the homeowner. At prices that low are typically like a wholesaler's got like 50 houses.
Yeah, you'd buy this house for $40,000, right? You'd go and put your $510 into it, right? And then you'd have this fake buyer lined up for $200,000.
Right.
And you were, just creating fake documents. You were, and these guys were buying it from you, and you're basically just pocketing the profit.
Right. Right. And the nice, exactly, obviously there's one or two other guys. There's a lot more into it.
Yeah.
But what would happen is I would go to title companies because I had been in the industry. So I know that at Lawyers Title, I know the title people. I can't go in there and say, hey, my name is David Silver or my name is Lee Black. I would set up the whole thing, and then I'd call them up and say, listen, David can't get off work. Can I pick up the package and then drop it off to him and have him sign it? They go, oh, gosh, okay, but you got to get a copy of his driver's license. I have to notarize everything. Of course.
Yeah.
I pick it up. I go sit in the parking lot for 45 minutes. I make some phone calls. I sign his name. I've already got the copy of the driver's license. Yeah. I put it in the file. I go back. They cut me a check.
And David Black is not even a real person. Like, he's nothing.
No.
He's just a guy on paper.
Lee Black is a I figured out how to get Social Security to issue me Social Security numbers to children that don't exist. So I'd get like a 10-month-old child Social Security number, and I would then order 3 secured credit cards in their name, make the payments for 6 months, and at 6 months, bam, they've got 700 credit scores. So, it's seasoning. So I've got a seasoned person, or a synthetic identity that's got perfect credit. Perfect credit. He's been on his job 2 years.
Right.
He's got all the documents. He owns a house worth $200,000, and he needs to refinance it at 80% to get a $160,000 loan. And I've only got $50,000 in it. I just made, after closing costs and everything else, I just made $100,000.
Right.
He buys 5 houses. He borrows on 5 or 6 houses, roughly $1 million. We make the payments for 3 or 4 months, and then when you realize he's overloaded with credit, because this happens very quickly, now his credit scores are 600, 605. So what do? You say, well, what do you do? Sorry. What do I do? I would say, me and the couple guys that were helping me with this, it's like, okay, well, he's not a viable borrower anymore. So we're going to go ahead, and we already had multiple borrowers lined up.
Right.
So what we do is we stop making the payments. And then when the when the company started sending collection letters in, I would print out an article from a like a 12-car pileup where someone was life flighted to like the hospital, and I'd retype the article and put my guy's name in there. Then I'd print it out, and I'd write a letter from his sister saying, look, David was in a tragic car accident. He's currently in a coma, and the doctors say even if he gets out of the coma, he'll never work again. You might as well just foreclose on the house. They'd foreclose on the house, and now they have a reason why this happened. They're not looking. They're not thinking fraud. He made 4 payments. He was in an accident. It happens. And so they stop coming around. They take the houses back. They think we just lent too much money on the house. We just lost $100,000. You also have to understand the value was going up because of what I was
synthetically,
doing.
right?
Right. Well, people are really now they're buying.
They're looking
these
at
houses.
it. The people outside of the operation are like, oh man, these houses are all selling for so much.
Well, I know, but people are now buying. Other rehabbers who would have paid $40 for that house, now because the values are so high, they're now buying it for $60, $70, $80.
Right.
Because they think that's what these things are selling for.
Right.
And so the banks aren't even getting hit that hard because they're reselling the houses. So they're not even losing the whole 110 they lost, or the whole 110 that I got. They're just selling it, and they lost 80, 60,
right.
50. So this goes on. And and I got caught by banks multiple times as fake people. Like they figured out this, they figured out that, and I'd call them back, and I'd just give them the money back. And so eventually what happens is someone that I know gets caught in the bank. He gets arrested in a bank trying to cash a check. And when he gets grabbed, he tells the FBI, or the local cops actually, that, look, I know about a scam that's being run. This guy's borrowed $10 or $11 million in like the last 18 months. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't hard to put together because my borrowers, as we talked about, my borrowers' names were the fake names that I'm making up are like David Silver, Lee Black, Brandon Green, James White. I mean, it's like, what I thought was clever.
The rainbow.
Right. Well, it was Reservoir Dogs. There was a movie called Reservoir Dogs, and everybody had a code name, Mr. Pink, Mr. Blue. So I thought it was cute. Wasn't cute at all when the judge heard it.
Right.
They didn't think, and they put it together very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's like he didn't even have to say, hey, we got to look into this. It's like, what are you talking about? Blue, red, green, yellow. Look, there's like 100 houses
trail
that are going under.
Right.
So the FBI, I'm already on paper. I'm already on probation. I keep saying paper. That's what guys call it, but it's probation. Okay. So I'm already on probation. The FBI. So I actually have a friend who's a sheriff's deputy. He comes to me and says, listen, bro, do you know somebody that got arrested? And I'm like, yeah, why? He's like, well, there was a task force put together 2 months ago on you, and they just handed it to the FBI, and they're coming to arrest you in a couple days.
Who told you this?
A friend of mine who was a sheriff's deputy.
Oh, wow.
Oh, listen, you know how many loans I've done for doctors, lawyers?
Yeah.
It's like everybody's like, oh, he's a doctor, or he's a lawyer. He wouldn't do anything fraudulent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he comes to me, he says, they're going to come arrest you in a few days. He happened to be dating a girl from Tampa Police Department that was on the task force. His name had come up. She came to him and said, your buddy's going to get arrested. So, I did the right thing. I went to the FBI and I said, look, this is what I've been doing. This is what's going on. I want to go ahead and mitigate the damage, and I want to try and help you and work with you to fix this entire thing. That's not what happened.
I was going to say, that definitely didn't happen.
What I actually did was I thought, well, I can't go to prison. Look at me. I'm adorable. I mean, it's not going to end well for me.
I've said that many times on this show. I'm not going to last in prison, dude.
I mean, that's not going to happen. So, I'm 5'5", 5'6". I'm 5'7" with a good pair of shoes. It's not going to work out. So what I do is I take off on the run. I take off. I go straight to Atlanta. I only have about $80,000 in cash. Now we had a couple million. Keep in mind, I'm taking this money. I'm buying vacant land, and we're building new houses. I had just funded a candidate for the 5th district in Ybor, which is Ybor City in Tampa, and gotten this guy elected to become city councilman so that he could get all my properties rezoned multifamily. So you know the difference between a single family and multifamily, about 3 times more value. But I just gotten him elected. By the way, almost all the money that went to this guy was going through these synthetic identities bank accounts. So I mean, he's got
stacking
$30,000 worth of bad checks going through green, blue, yellow. So that didn't work out either. That's a whole nother podcast. So did anything happen to that guy? Yeah, he got he got popped. He did, and then he went to, and he was a gangster. He actually goes to trial. Oh, I mean, look,
well, what was interesting?
Guilty. He's guilty.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting was out when we were talking before this. You're telling me like, oh yeah, a lot of the banks, they wanted to work with me because they had realized that, they were making errors and whatever. And, they end up coming back like, oh man, all right, just give us the money back and whatever.
Oh yeah. That's happened numerous times.
Yeah.
I got called one time with my mortgage company was caught with $2 million in bad loans. I mean, you're done. These are all bad. And the guy, and I was like, look, if you're expecting me to give you $2 million, like I don't have it. And the owner of the bank said, what I'm expecting is that I'm going to sell these to Household Bank because they're already a part of a larger bundle. But if any of them come back on me, Matt, I'm in Chicago. You have to promise to help me get rid of these properties. And I was like, what am I going to say? No, you're hit. Call the FBI. I refuse. No, of course I'm going to help you, bro. Sure. Nothing ever came back. He came down 2 weeks later, bought me and a couple of the guys drinks. And after he'd had a couple of drinks, he told me personally, he said, look, I don't even care about fraud. I just don't want it to come back on me.
Right.
He owned a bank.
Yeah. Well, and I asked you, I go, hey, all these banks that, knew you were doing fraud and called you out on it, yet you were able to negotiate with them to, not have them, turn you in.
Right.
You said nobody ever got caught for anything. They all just walked away. Yeah. And you look at the housing crash in 2008, the same deal. Everyone's like, why are none of these guys being prosecuted? These big banks. And it's like, nobody got popped.
Yeah. I was going to say, you were talking about liar loans. They call them liar loans, whatever. No doc, no assets, verification. I knew a guy that had bought several, $5 or $10 million. And then he got caught. He went to trial because he's like, the mortgage broker was the one filling out the application. Like he's the one stating all this. He's making the numbers work. And they're like, you signed the app, whatever. Like they wanted to give him 3 years. 3 years, you're going to go to jail for 3 years. You'll go to a camp. I mean, this is like for all the real estate guys that think, you can't get in trouble. It's white collar crime. It's this, it's that. Listen, they offered him 3 years. He said, I'm not going to jail for 3 years. I haven't done anything wrong. Listen, so he goes to trial. You don't go to trial, okay? If you're guilty, you got a 100% chance of getting found guilty. If you're innocent, you've got a 50% chance, okay? He's already gray area. He gets found guilty. He's thinking, I'll get 3 years, which they're already offering me. Well, I don't know who told him that. He got 26 years.
Dang.
He was in federal prison with me. He teaches the yoga class now.
In prison.
Nicest guy you've ever met. Wife comes to see him. Yeah. He's going to do 26 years. It's horrible. It's just people don't realize you're in a bad spot.
It's crazy. So anyways, you were on the run.
Right. So I take off. I have like $80,000 in cash. That's all I could get out in a day. I go straight to Atlanta. And the short version is I rent a house from a guy. The girl I was with rented a house. So we rent a house from the guy. I go downtown. I love talking to real estate guys because you'll understand like most people, you have to break it down. Like you're like, okay, this is how public records work. So you have to break it down. They're like, that's not possible. Yes, it is. So I rent the house, and the guy's name's Michael Shanahan. I rent the house. I make a fake ID. All right. And I make a fake ID. I have a degree in fine arts. It's not hard for me to make documents. So I make a fake ID. I then go downtown and I look up his mortgage. He had 2 mortgages with Bank of America, first and a HELOC.
Yeah.
I create a satisfaction of mortgage for both of those.
And you recorded it.
And I recorded it. So now, a month or so later, when it hits public records, if you look up his house, it's like, oh, Michael Shanahan bought this house 10 years ago. He took out 2 mortgages. Both of them were satisfied.
He paid him.
He doesn't owe any money.
Right.
Now, he's still making the payment, so Bank of America doesn't know that they've been satisfied. People think, oh, well, public records would call Bank of America. They don't call.
No, not at all.
No, you pay your $11 fee or $22 fee, whatever it is. They record it, and it's up to the title company to figure it out. The title company sees it and says, it's a Bank of America satisfaction. We're not calling Bank of America.
Right.
It's a satisfaction. It's right here.
One thing I want to add before you go into it is so many people think that there's just this constant communication between the counties and the banks and the sellers. And it's like, no. Like one of the things, since we're talking about mortgages, is doing subject to. People are always like, oh man, what about the due on sale clause?
You have to pay it off.
Yeah, like if the bank is going to find out and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's why, number one, I always say, like, in real estate, almost everything is gray area, because it's like, okay, many people do subject to. People promote it, people talk about it. But at the end of the day, if you actually read the bank's documents, they're saying that, hey, you can't do this. We can call the loan due. But guess what happens? You do it. You just keep paying the loan. They don't know.
Right.
They never look. They don't check to see if ownership changed. They don't ever check.
Well, not just that. I've had them where they were in the process of foreclosing. I actually showed up at the it was an attorney that was doing the foreclosure. He owned a collection company too. So I show up and I sit down and I say, look, what does the guy owe you? And he's like, oh, he owes like $3,000. I said, I'll give you the $3,000. He's like, oh, you're the guy that it was transferred in. I said, that's right. I've already got a bunch of money in the property. I was paying him. He didn't pay you. You started to foreclose. And he's like, okay, well, here's how much it is. I pay him. He actually prints out some sheets that says, here's what the payments will be. Here's where you're going to mail it.
Yep.
In the other guy's name.
Yep.
They don't care. And I heard you were talking to Graham Stephan the other day, and you were talking to Jack.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned owner occupancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've had that happen where I bought a house, owner occupied, didn't move in the house, started renovating the house, pulled off the old siding and everything. It was in good shape, but I didn't like the siding. I wanted to do some renovation. So pulled off the siding. They sent a drive-by appraisal after that loan closed because they were selling it. It's part of a package.
Right, right.
They see it torn apart. I get a phone call from the lender. What are you doing? The house is under renovation. This is fraud. You don't even live there. And I went, whoa, 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 whoa. I said, 1, I already made my first payment. I'm already paying you. 2, I'm doing some renovations. I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And I said, 3, I didn't want to live in the house while they're tearing the house apart. I'm going to move in it. And they're like, so this woman's going crazy on me. And she's, we're going to foreclose on you. We're going to this. I said, you know what? Do that. I can't wait to get in front of a judge and tell them that I am making payments on a house that I am fixing up, and I am moving in the house. By the time you get me in front of the judge, I'll be living in the house. All the new vinyl siding will be on the house, and you're going to look like a fool. And I'll have made 3 payments by then.
Yeah.
No judge is going to take that, allow you to foreclose on a house that I'm paying on, that I'm living in. And so somebody else called me back. She hang up 10, 20 minutes later. Somebody else calls me back and says, listen, when will the new siding be on? We just want a picture. I'm sorry about Jennifer. She's very high strung.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Yeah. No, and that's why it's just funny, man, because
people get scared.
Well, people get scared. And look, I mean, subject to is not fraud. It's just like,
absolutely.
It says that you can't do it, but it says, well, I don't even think that it says you can't do it. It just says that they have the right.
Option.
They have the right to call it due if they want.
Right. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Well,
you're getting
despite
payments.
what people think, they don't want your house.
Right.
They want the payments.
They just want money. That's it.
If you're paying, that's all they care about. We have a performing note or asset. That's all we care about.
Right.
We don't want any problems.
Right. No, for sure. So I want to jump back into your story about what you happened. But before that, let's hear a quick word from our sponsors. Have you ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you didn't have the time to find deals yourself? That's where Fundrise comes in. Fundrise is a crowdfunding platform that has transacted over $5 billion in real estate and has over 150,000 active investors. While many funds, like my own, require accredited investors, Fundrise allows anyone to invest with as little as $500. If you'd like to learn more, check out funrise.com. Once again, that's funrise.com. Are you looking to find off-market real estate deals? One of the best tools my team uses is Batch Leads. With Batch Leads, you're able to pull data, manage lists, and send text messages. On top of that, you can get nationwide access to the MLS to get pictures and comps. My team has used Batch Leads to get some of our best deals, so I know it works. If you want to start today, you can get half off your first month by going to batchleads.io and using the promo code Ryan. Once again, that's batchleads.io, promo code Ryan for half off your first month. Now, back to the show. All right, so you're on the run, man. What happens next? How do you get caught? I got to know how you get caught.
Well, I actually get caught several times. I actually go on the run. So I borrowed that one house we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So I satisfy the loan on that house. I then turn around and I go to, now keep in mind, this is a guy, I've created a fake identity in this guy's, I have his ID, and I create a fake synthetic identity.
Right.
Not using his social, nothing. I don't even use his date of birth, nothing. So I've got a completely synthetic identity on Michael Shanahan. I then go to 3 different hard money lenders, and I borrow money from 3 different hard money lenders on the house at the same time. So I get about $450,000. I deposit the money into multiple bank accounts. I pull the money out. I take off. I go do my next scam. The next scam I do, I go to, and I'll cut to it quick, is that I go to South Carolina and I do the same thing. I get somebody to owner finance their house to me, satisfy the loan on the house, and then I go to 6 different lenders, and I borrow money on the house, and I borrow like 1.3 on that house and another house, and I'm pulling the money out of the house, out of the banks. And it turns out that I'd applied for one loan, and the woman had gone on vacation. Then I canceled the loan. When she came back, I canceled the loan, but she had already ordered the title. So an abstractor went downtown and saw the other mortgages showing up on the house. She knows it's fraud.
Right.
She calls the local authorities, calls Wachovia Bank. They end up putting an alert out. So next time I go into the bank to pull out like $8,000 or $9,000 or whatever, however much cash it was, a couple of deputies come up behind me. They handcuff me. I was actually a guy named Gary Sullivan at the time. So I was Gary Sullivan. It was a homeless person that I had interviewed. I was getting homeless people's IDs, getting homeless people's information, and getting IDs in their name, driver's licenses, and passports. But by now, I've graduated to getting the State Department to order. I was tired of making my own IDs, so I'd rather just go in the DMV. So if I get pulled over by the police, I can give them a real ID. And then I have to travel. I can't travel as Matt Cox. There's a red notice on Interpol for me, so I have to get a U.S. passport. So I get U.S. passports. So, but the homeless guy was named Gary Sullivan. I met him here in Vegas. So I borrowed a bunch of money in his name, and I got caught in the bank. They handcuffed me. They know there's fraud that's been committed. A detective comes down. They start questioning me about the fraud, and I won't get in, just for the sake of time. For the sake of time, the fact that you need to buy my book. Yeah. It's also on Audible.
Guys, we got his book right here, Shark in the Housing Pool. So your full story in depth.
Super detail, explains how I did stuff, everything.
Yeah, so we'll link to it down below.
So what happens is I actually convince the detective, that Gary Sullivan, that I haven't done anything wrong. Like they're saying he's borrowed 3. They caught 3 of the mortgage, not all 6. Wachovia's fraud department is saying it's fraud. He's running a shotgunning scam. It's not even his real name, but I had a real ID. So he sounds unreasonable, and I'm being perfectly calm. And so the detective believes me and thinks they haven't made a mistake at the bank, which I'm like, it sounds like they made a mistake at the bank. I work for a labor company. Here's my, I get them to handcuff me. Here's my business card. You can call. Here's my driver's license. He lets me follow him back to the police department, fill out a police report, and he lets me go. I drive straight to 3 more banks, pull out more money, get on the interstate, take off. I end up breaking with the chick that I'm dating. I give her like $500,000-$600,000. I take like $100,000 at that moment. Well, I mean, it was you'd have to read the whole book. She's bipolar. She's driving me nuts. I mean, her argument, she had a powerful argument. Her argument was, you can go commit fraud again. I can't. I need this money to survive on. Right. And I was like, okay, I get that. So, okay, give me, she gives me $100,000. I take off. And look, I got another $2.5 million very quickly. I go to Nashville. So I was in Nashville. Start buying up properties. You'll actually like this. how much time do we? Okay, just give me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what I did in Nashville? I bought a bunch of properties in an area called J.C. Napier. Same thing, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 houses.
Mm-hmm.
I create a website called NashvilleRestorationProject.com. I get banners and I stick them on all the houses. So I have like those metal poles, and I have like a vinyl banner that's like 3 foot or like 4 foot tall, 5 foot tall by like 2 foot wide or 18 inches. And it says over and over again, it says, restoration project, restoration, Nashville restoration. It says, since like
1812.
Right, exactly. And the houses are cleaned up. I bought 4 or 5 houses. I clean them up, and I put these things on them. I do a website where as I renovated one of the houses, I take pictures all the time. So I've got the time-lapse videos of the houses being renovated.
Mm-hmm.
People see them. And then when I start calling to get an appraisal done, and the appraisers come out, the appraiser actually walks into one of the houses. This is a conversation. He looks at the house and he goes, I'm buying these for 50, 60 grand. I've got them appraised. I'm recording the value at 210, 195, 180, 187. He comes out and he says, what'd you pay for this house? And I went, about 185, I said 187, 187,000. Really paid 60.
Yeah.
And he goes, haven't done anything to it. And I said, why? What do you think it's worth? And he goes, well, a year ago, I'd have told you it's worth about 50, 60 grand. And I went, okay. He said, but, since the Nashville Restoration Project has come in this area, and they've been renovating all this, because you go into the website, it talks about the Nashville Restoration, how they're working with the city's future comp plan, and they're redeveloping the area, and it's all BS. And I actually used, how they have future comp plans, right, for every city. I actually used the same color scheme, used some of their stuff from their web. It looked like the same. I mean, there was a connection there. And so he starts telling me about how the Nashville Restoration Project was this big outfit and how they dumped millions and they work hand in hand with the city's comp plan. And then he said, oh, yeah. I said, really? He goes, oh, yeah. Yeah, they've been around forever. He said, they did the same thing in Germantown about 20 years ago. Really? Because I was in Tampa 20 years ago in like high school, And I'm thinking, okay. He comes up with he starts adding to the fiction. Sure enough, he gave me a legitimate appraisal for $190,000 on a house that I bought for $60,000 and put some signs up in a website, a very basic dummy website that I did myself.
That's crazy.
So I borrow a bunch of money on those things. I get a girlfriend. We move in together. We're dating. The short version is we start dating and seeing another girl. So she's coming over every once in a while. And at some point, Dateline NBC News comes out. So Dateline NBC News is doing a whole 1 hour episode on me on the run. And I know it's coming down. I know they're going to get me. I know that at this point, they're going to grab me. Keep in mind, I've called the FBI. I tried to turn myself in. That conversation didn't go well. So, I'm at this point, I'm going to go and I'm going to leave. I was going to go to Australia. You could go to Australia if you had $100,000 and $100,000, no criminal record. And I had a guy that I had a real ID, passport, everything. He had no criminal record. Could go to Australia if you had a business plan and $100,000. They'd let you be a permanent resident alien and you didn't have to give them your fingerprints. You could buy property. You can open a business. You cannot take a job as an Aussie. You cannot vote as an Aussie, but you can hire them. So it was perfect. I'm going to show up with a couple million. So what I end up doing is we're seeing this girl. We're about to leave. We're pulling money out of the bank. She figures out what's going on. My girlfriend tells her what's happening. And, it's a bad
Your
situation.
ex-girlfriend.
Well, no, my girlfriend at the time. I mean, I dated another. This is another girl I'm seeing.
Side chick. Okay.
Yeah, this is another chick. So
All
now
right.
we're both dating. I mean, it's complicated. The fact is that she ends up calling the Secret Service. She turns me in. They show up. They arrest me. They grab me.
So your side chick brought you down.
Well, I mean, it's not side chick. We were all together. She's well, I don't want to have to spell it. She's coming over 2-3 times a week. She likes me. She likes my girlfriend.
Got it.
But not so much that she's not willing to call the Secret Service and get like a $10,000 reward. So, and what's so funny about this, and I hate to say this, I'd have given her $1 million for a 10-minute head start at that time. Like I would have gladly handed her over everything I had to just give me a few minutes to haul ass.
Right.
but it didn't work out. And this is the thing too, like, I'm not mad at her. Like, she did the right thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
At the time, I had a vastly different frame of mind at the time. And now I realize, no, based on the articles that she read, I'm a bad person. I'm doing bad things. He's wanted. He needs to go to jail. That makes sense. Call the police. You're doing the right thing. I'm not asking you not to.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is I get grabbed. I get sentenced. I get brought downtown, Nashville. They transfer me. Eventually, I get back to Atlanta. They condense all of my cases. I have cases in 4 different jurisdictions. They condense those cases. I get sentenced. They asked me to be interviewed by Dateline. They did a second 1-hour special. They asked me to do American Greed, a bunch of stuff. Ultimately, I end up getting sentenced to 26 years. I go to prison. And while I'm in prison, I do these Dateline, American Greed, and they consider that substantial assistance, and they reduce my sentence. I was
about to say, what's the incentive? But okay.
So the incentive, the ethics and fraud course, if you're a mortgage broker, you have to take like 9 hours of continuing education. 3 hours is on ethics and fraud, and a vast majority of the people in the United States that have taken the ethics and fraud course, I taught the ethics and fraud course. Like, I worked with one of the schools to teach that.
All the different ways you could commit fraud.
Right, all the different, from shotgunning scams to straw man scams, owner occupancy scams, cashback scams.
By the way, with all these scams, did you hear about them from other people, or you just like thought about it and you're like, this would work?
I really didn't. I think naturally there are certain, you start to see holes in the system and you think, gosh, I could give this guy his down payment. And if we could just figure out how to prove to the bank that he's had the money, I can give him his down payment, and then he can qualify for the loan, and then I'll get all my money back plus my down payment. Like, now I'll make my $40,000 plus I'll make the $7,000 down payment that I gave him back.
Right.
So it's worth it.
Right.
Like, I'm in a bad position. This is what I'm going to do. My buddy Jimmy does it. Tom does it. Everybody's telling me it works. Or maybe they don't tell me it works, and I just come up with it on my own.
Right. So it's a mix.
Yeah. And, there's other times it's like, do you put in a new tub, or do you have a company come in and recoat the whole thing? I know there's rust, but they can sand it down. It's a crappy thing to do. I should probably spend $500, but for $200 I could do it. And by the time it really starts falling apart, it's been 2 years. And I mean, what do these people care? What does it matter? I'm good. So that's called a log cabin scam. Okay. So it's where you're building, like, you're making it look good, but it's really just a log cabin.
Got it.
And so, there's those scams, and there's all these different scams. So I write up, unfortunately, I had actually done every scam. So I write, and he was like, you're the only guy out there that has owned a mortgage company, development company, been in real estate this long, and has done every single scam that's out there you've done. So I worked with this guy, Jim Montram, and I wrote that course. It was 9,500 words, and it was being taught, gosh, I think it was, I heard it was being taught up till 2 or 3 years ago. People would call my ex-wife and say, I just took the Jim Montram class. And guess what? It's on your ex-husband. He taught the class. So anyway, I end up getting my sentence reduced twice. And it ends up being around 15 years, dropped from 26 to 15. And I end up doing 12 and a half years. And I already know what your next question is. Was it worth it?
I wasn't going to ask that.
I actually have guys go, so was it worth it? Are you serious?
No, I wasn't going to ask that. No.
I have people ask that.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Like, I have a lifetime of regrets. Like, it's horrible. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah.
So if I had just been patient and done it the right way,
you wouldn't have to go through all that.
Yeah. I could have been you. I could have been at least half you. I mean, I could have been half as successful, which would have been plenty.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
right.
It's just
with all that, I mean,
arrogance.
Well, and too, with obviously your savviness and knowledge, they allowed you to do that. And then obviously you're a hustler,
Right.
So like when you combine, hustle with knowledge, with savviness, like, I mean, you can make as much money as you want,
Right.
but you just have to choose whether you're going to do it in a legit way or non-legit way.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's, and especially in the real estate industry, look, it's hard. Like,
right.
It's like the temptation is there at every facet of the process. There's temptation to commit some kind of fraud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for sure. And that's why I wanted to really get your perspective on it, because I have seen fraud with my own eyes. I mean, like you said at the beginning, well, not to the level that you were doing things,
Right.
but like the minor frauds that people don't even realize are fraud.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
I've
saying?
seen. I know, and sometimes it's like you can't think this is right, but they can convince themselves, no, this is fine.
Yeah. So I've seen that. I've seen, obviously big fraud. I've bought multiple houses, or we've been under contract where we later found out that it was identity theft. It's happened a couple of times, and we couldn't buy the house because as we went through the title process, they're like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. And by the time we, finally get the seller in, we realize this is not the seller, like for whatever reason. Or they created a fake power of attorney or something like that. And you see fraud in real estate a lot.
Yeah.
So my question for you, hearing your whole story and, what you went through and, you've been out for almost 2 years now.
Right.
Is what would you tell a guy who, like you said, is facing that temptation? They know that they could easily make more money doing something. And, maybe they're just, I don't know, like doing minor stuff. Like, what would you say?
I mean, like there is no minor stuff. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Like, and everybody says, oh, everybody does it. No, everybody
Right.
doesn't do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just be patient. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody wants to be patient. They want to be a multimillionaire immediately.
Right.
Like you can't wait and do it the correct way. I mean, what's so hard about that? But because deep down, if you really look at yourself, it's like, because I need to do it right away, and even if I have to do it right, the wrong way, it needs to happen right away. Why? Because I need to impress all of my friends.
Right.
Because that's really what it is.
Right.
Like, you're living in a decent house and you've got a girlfriend or friends, and it's like, if they're really your friends, and they don't care if you work at Walmart.
Right.
Like, you don't have to have the new car.
Right.
And if they're not friends because of that, or I don't get to do the post and I want to go on vacation, and if I make these W-2s and pay stubs, it'll work out for me. And all of that seems harmless until you get your livelihood taken away and you're sitting inside of a prison, or even if it's you get lucky and you get probation.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're really working
Right.
at you're working in the back room of some storage place, or you're changing oil. You're doing a job that you don't like. Not that there's nothing wrong with being a mechanic. My girlfriend's a mechanic. But, it's not if you want to drive, a Ferrari.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So if that's not your goal, then that's a problem. So if you're just patient, then it'll happen. But if you're not, and you do it the wrong way, there's a very good chance that when it goes wrong, it goes so wrong that it takes you a decade to recover, if you recover at all.
Right.
And it's irrevocable. Like, most people just don't understand what it's like when somebody finds out they're a felon.
Right.
People will be disgusted with you. Like,
Right.
your friends that you think are your friends are now embarrassed. Like, or you meet some girl and she's like, look, don't say anything about it. I didn't tell them that, you did 3 months in jail, or I didn't tell them that you're a felon. I didn't tell them this. Don't, you're going to meet my parents, but don't mention this. Or my
Right.
mom's already looked you up and she saw that this, and she's super upset. It's like, you did this so you could make $3,200. You cost yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars because you couldn't wait a couple of months for the qualified buyer.
Right. Well,
It's just,
I totally agree with you. I think from what I have seen with people, and not even with fraud itself, but just not morally doing the right things. I look at social media with this instant gratification, right? It's creating the instant gratification culture, like you said. And you see all these different get-rich-quick schemes and all these different things. So it's like people are always looking for that quick way to do it, whether it's legal or illegal. Everybody wants the get-rich-quick thing. And one thing I try to always do is like throw the realness on it and show. I try and be as transparent as I can. So I will tell people, it's like, look, you want to get into flipping houses. This business ain't easy.
Yeah.
Like you can lose money. Finding deals is not easy, but the reward is there if you do all the right things, and one of the big things that I have really tried to do is make sure that my reputation is clean, because as you know, the network that you have is your biggest resource, like if I screw someone over on just one deal, it sets me back so far.
Yeah.
And it's just not worth it. It's not worth it. If you just play the long game, I've seen so many people, like I said, not fraud, but screw people over on deals. Like, right? They'll go behind someone's back, try and get the deal. They'll, stab somebody behind the back, and they ruin their reputation.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go to jail, but I'll tell you what, they cost themselves a lot of money.
Yeah. Now people don't want to deal with them.
Yeah.
And plus having a good reputation too. You go to a hard money lender. I've had hard money lenders that I borrowed so much money from and always paid them on time and always, how many times have you had the hard money lender that you're supposed to make a payment and it's coming, let's say it's due on the 5th, you think you're going to have a closing on the 3rd, and then suddenly something happens and now it's not going to close till the 8th or the 9th, or the 10th. And so to me, you call the hard money lender, listen, here's what's going on. I thought I was going to have the money. I thought this, I thought that. They appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
And they understand that because most guys are juggling multiple loans and they'll just not call the guy, like dodge him until it closes. Like I've had such good relationships with hard money lenders that literally I've called the guys up and said, I need to buy this property. It's $60,000. We're supposed to close in a couple days. I had a loan that fell through. I'm going to lose a $3,000 non-refundable deposit. I need to close. And they're like, I'm going on vacation like tomorrow night. I'm like, oh man, no, it's okay. It's okay. So what is it? Oh, it's a house on this and this. Okay, great. Look, you're going to close at the same title company? I'll just send the $60,000 over.
Yep.
Doesn't have to see the house because he trusts me. I've borrowed 15 loans. I've never been late.
Right.
So that can definitely carry over, just being communicative and explaining. People understand. What they hate is not returning phone calls, dodging, giving bad stories. I mean, just say it.
Yeah. I mean, I've screwed up so many times in my career. I've had so many failures, mistakes, and every single time, as long as I've just owned up to it and I've said whatever needs to be said and, asked for whatever it is I need. Like, look, this is what's going on. This is what we need to do.
Right.
It sucks, but, this is the only way that we can go moving forward versus the guy who, doesn't want any kind of conflict or they're too scared.
Mm-hmm.
Like it never works. Honesty is always the best policy.
Yeah, it's definitely, listen. Like the funny thing is, every mistake I've ever made, and there are so many of them, every mistake I've ever made, and I actually said this to my girlfriend the other day. I said, every mistake I've ever made is based on arrogance. It was because I wasn't humble. Because I wasn't patient. It was because I was trying to prove how smart I am. It was narcissism, and and so like every time I go into a decision now, I try and think about that, and I think, are you doing this based on your ego, or are you doing this because it's the right thing to do?
Right.
And I mean, and had I applied those principles 15 years ago, I wouldn't be a 51-year-old man who lived in went to the halfway house for 7 months, got out, lived in someone's spare room for almost 18 months, just got a 1-bedroom apartment, which is where I run my podcast out of. So I have a room. I'm renting a room, and I have my living room is where I run my podcast. 51 years old, nothing.
Yeah.
Less than 2 years ago, got out of prison, took $300, went to Walmart and bought a new wardrobe. Because when the Secret Service comes in and they arrest you, they don't pack your stuff up and put it in boxes for you. They just let the neighbors take it. So I got out at 51 with nothing.
Crazy.
Matter of fact, I'm still wearing blue jeans that I bought at Walmart 2 years ago. Super comfortable.
Highly recommend.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Just to put it in perspective of, like, one decision. When I look at your story, it's like I see, and this is something that plays out for many people in regards to temptation or sin, whatever you want to say, is like it starts off as just a little thing, and then you push the envelope more, you push it more, you push it, and then by the time it's this full blown, just you would have never imagined. Like when you look back at your life from when it started to where it got to, are you like, how did that even happen? Like it just...
Last night, we shared it. We got a room for all of us that came here, and Colby and I are in the same room with 2 beds.
Yeah.
And was it this morning? This morning, and I'm sitting there, and we were just talking, and I looked over at him, and I said, "Quite a life I've carved out for myself." And he just was like, "Look, it's coming back. It's he's like, it's gonna be okay." I'm like, at 50, listen, at 51, look, I got a 91-year-old mother that I go to see 4 days a week. I go to dinner with her. I have breakfast with her 3 days a week. I had dinner once a week. I'm 51 years old, so I can't get a regular job. Like, I'm 51, trying to be there for my mom, who came to visit me every 2 weeks for 12 years. Bro, man. If I even think about it, I'll start crying. Yeah. So it's like, it's so, like, you really don't realize how bad things can go and how quickly.
Well, and you can't even get a job in the thing that you're most skilled at. They won't let you in real estate.
Multiple things.
Yeah.
Like anything that touched my fraud, which is development, construction, finance, mortgages, real estate.
Anything with money.
I can't be a part of. So what am I qualified to do?
Right.
Like
legally,
I don't, like, I can't, and I still have to pay back $6 million, which, I'm good for. I don't have it on me right now. But I mean, it's, so
you got that hanging over your head constantly.
Plus, you try and go get an apartment. Try and go get an apartment.
Right.
As a felon.
Yeah.
Sorry, no. And you have to pay $75 to get the no. Right. So to run my credit, or to run my criminal
background
record,
check,
right?
And then they find
$75 no. $75 no. So I always love it when I say, "Can I?" And they go, "Well, let's run it. It's $75." I'm like, "Yeah, but you already know if you'll take felons." "Well, we don't know sometimes." Here's a $75. No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
just Google me.
Oh,
just that's all you should say next time. Hey, just Google me. Like, it's out there.
Listen, I finally found a place where the guy was like, "How old is it? Violent? And how old is it?" And I was like, "It's 15 years old, and this is what it is, and it's nonviolent." He goes,
"All right, you're
cool.
going
to be okay."
Yeah.
Give me the $75. Oh.
But then he said yes.
Yeah, but then he came back. He was like, "Perfect. You're good. You're good."
Yeah. So, obviously, speaking of work, I asked you this. I said, "Hey, like, what do you do now?" And you're doing some different stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, obviously I like crime. So when I went to prison, I started writing other guys' stories. I was on American Greed, and people were reaching out to me, and other inmates had heard my story, and they were all saying, "Look, you've got to write a book." So I ended up writing my own book, and that took a long time.
Right.
And I read a bunch of books on how to write books and that sort of thing. And it's hard to write your own book because you don't see you how you are, right? And it's like, I hate to use this example, but it's like if 50 people say you're an asshole, you're probably an asshole. Right. You don't see it though,
right?
But at some point you have to kind of go, it's got to be true, like
yeah.
So you have to really look at yourself and what your decision making was and why you did these things, and not justify it and just own it. And that's hard. So I ended up writing my own book, and so many guys at the prison were starting to read just the manuscript, and they were like, "Bro, it's amazing. It's amazing." And then they started saying, "You need to talk to this guy. He's got an amazing story." So I started talking to other guys. I ended up writing a story for a guy named Ephraim Deveroli. And Ephraim Deveroli, his story. Did you ever see the movie War Dogs?
Yeah.
Okay. So Jonah Hill plays Ephraim Deveroli.
Okay.
So I wrote Ephraim Deveroli's memoir, which was called Once a Gunrunner. Deveroli got out before me. He started shopping it. Warner Brothers gets a hold of it. According to Deveroli's lawsuit, and Warner Brothers never denied that they got a hold of it. They used it to write the movie, part of the movie, War Dogs. They didn't have enough information on the article they'd bought. So he sues them. They settle with him. I get out early. I sue Deveroli because he never paid me. You saw the movie. You know who he is. They made him look soft and cuddly. So I sue him. We settle, and then so so I'd written his book once ago. I also wrote a book called Generation Oxy. I got a couple of guys into Rolling Stone magazine. I optioned the film rights to the Rolling Stone article. I also wrote. So I start writing guys' stories because I thought, if I get out of here and I have their intellectual property, like I have them sign an agreement with me where we connect their life rights to the story that I've written, then when I get out, maybe I can do like a podcast, or I can maybe get a documentaries made. Maybe I can turn one of these into a movie. I mean, I just wrote a story that was turned into a movie.
Yeah, I've already done it.
Right. So I've got these. I could maybe shop them. I didn't know, but I felt like I had something. I felt like there was value there.
Right.
And nobody saw it but me. And I had the time. I had the time to retrain myself as a writer, and I enjoyed doing it. I'm a creative person.
Yeah.
So I started writing guy stories that had very unique stories. And then eventually, when I got out of prison, I started shopping those stories. And when I shopped those stories, I've now got 2 of them are one production company has taken interest in 2 of them. They've done sizzle reels. There's 2 more that are being looked at by a production company. And I've been shopping those stories, and they're being turned into docudramas. And one of them's being looked at for a movie. I'll actually show you the sizzle reel when we're done here.
Yeah.
It's 3 minutes. Like, I can't show it because you have to. They're so secretive.
Right.
But you'll see it. You're gonna be like, wow, that's amazing. So I'm basically a true crime writer, and I'm trying to become I'm an executive producer on some stuff, and I'm trying to turn these things into movies. And in the meantime, I told you I paint. You saw my painting. I paint pop art paintings, and that pays my bills. And I sell books. Obviously, the books, there's like 7 books online. They sell, so that pays me. The artwork pays me until these things start hitting, and when they end up on streaming networks and stuff, and then
you know what's crazy about all that is, well, you said that your degree is in fine arts, right? So I imagine that was a passion for you growing up,
right?
I mean, people don't just go to college to get a degree in fine arts without them having a passion for it. And then, like, if just not knowing you, but hearing your story, it's like you went down this path of business and real estate and stuff, and then you got back out, and now you're back in fine arts.
Right.
You're painting, which I saw your paintings. They're very good. We'll link to your Instagram down below. Everybody check out his paintings. Like, they're legit. We'll probably show them here on the YouTube version of the podcast so you guys can see. But, you're painting, you're writing books. You've got your book. You've said there's 6 others that you're selling about, these other guys, right?
Right.
And it's just all this creative stuff. And now you're pitching it to networks, trying to get them made into documentaries and movies. And it's just cool to see, like, it just seems like you took a detour to get to your real passion of being creative.
That's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
Just a slight detour. Just a little detour.
Yeah. I definitely should have stuck with what came naturally to begin with. But,
yeah.
It's all right. It's not over.
Yeah.
It's not over.
No, for sure. And I think you had mentioned your podcast a bunch of times too. Like, we'll link to the podcast, but I think for me anyways, I did not grow up as a creative person. I didn't know how to draw. I didn't know how to write. I didn't know how to act or film or speak well. I was an athlete. I played pro baseball. Like, that was all I wanted to do.
Right.
And when I look at my life now, I spent the first bunch of my life pursuing sports. Okay. Didn't work out, going to this next phase. I get into business and do that. But now I look at the current phase of my life, and it is being creative. It's like I have to create content and think of new ideas. I wrote a book as well, and I can tell you, I didn't write 7 of them, but writing one of them was really hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard coming up with content.
Coming up with original content is very difficult, and I enjoy the challenge of it, and I enjoy interviewing people like yourself who have great stories. I mean, that's what you're doing with books,
right?
Just way harder and in depth, but it's funny.
I was just gonna say it's funny because when I was locked up, guys used to say, "Well, you're gonna get out in like a year. You're gonna this. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" And I used to say, I'm gonna try and figure out a way to make a living just being me. And they were like, what does that mean? I go, just doing the things that I love to do. Because I won't have to work. I just get to do what I want to do. And if I can make a living doing that, I don't have to make a huge living. If I just make enough to pay my bills, like, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be happy.
Yeah.
And I always say this is upsetting. Okay. like I never realized how unhappy I was when I had millions of dollars until I had nothing. And I just focused on what I love to do.
Yeah.
Then I knew, well, then this is what I should do. Like
Yeah.
millions of dollars, never. I was miserable.
Right.
I'm taking Xanax. I'm taking Paxil. I can't sleep at night. Now I can barely pay my bills. Like I got a little bit of money coming in, but I sleep like a baby.
Right.
So, sorry.
No, man, I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. And I know that there's a lot of people listening right now, especially if they've made it this far, that can relate to that, can relate to pursuing the money, whatever, however it is for them, right? And just hating life, pursuing the money. I mean, that's something I talk to people about all the time. I mean, like you said, you had millions of dollars. I know people who've made millions of dollars as well. Doesn't matter whether it was legit or not. They still have the same result. They're unhappy because they're...
Oh, I know guys that are millionaires. They're just miserable.
Yeah.
It's like, you are miserable.
Right.
And I know the guys that get to teach their little league, their kids' little league teams, and they won't shut up about their kids, and they're happy as heck, and it's almost unbearable to be around them.
But you're like, man, I wish.
Yeah, but exactly.
Yeah.
And I envy that guy. Like
Yeah.
I envy that guy that has that, that lower middle class life or a middle class life, and he's got a couple of kids, and he just wants to be able to go to the movies and take his wife out to dinner, and he can't stop talking about his kids, and like that's not me, that's not my life, but I want to be that guy. Like I wish I was that guy.
I want his joy.
Exactly.
Right.
So this is the closest I can get.
No, I think you're obviously in the right path. Being able to make a living doing things you enjoy doing, there's nothing better than that.
Right.
And for you, painting, writing, pitching, doing podcasts. I've thought about this as my life has evolved as well. And when I look at business, I've made my money in business. And every time I start a new business or try to scale my business, it's cool, but it's like, it's whatever at that point, because I've already had the success I want to have. But when I look at what I get to do with social media and what that brings me so much more passion and joy, because I get to share my experiences and message and have people like you come on who can share theirs. And, we can get a big audience to hear the message, and really impact lives. And, as a byproduct too, it just even makes the businesses even bigger. So it's like, if I look at what I could possibly do that's any better than what I do now, I couldn't figure it out. Like,
Right.
This is it.
Yeah.
And I think you've realized that for you as well.
Yeah.
So, well, dude, I really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Sure.
Guys, what a crazy story. And, if you want to continue to, follow Matt on his journey, definitely go follow him on social media. Check out his YouTube, Instagram. Yeah. We'll link to all those in the description, and, we'll link to the books and everything else, man. But, dude, thanks for coming out, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, dude. All right, guys, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace. Thanks for watching The Ryan Pineda Show. If you want to work with me, head over to ryanpineda.com. You can find my courses, coaching programs, and upcoming events. We also have free resources you can download, so head over to ryanpineda.com.